What's the difference between a redraw account and an offset account and the benefits of either that you've found? Rental market's still very tight. Overall market is looking very good. There's been a few extra properties come on in these certain areas, which is probably a good thing for tenants, giving them some more options.
Welcome to Perth Property Insider, where you will learn how to grow your wealth and improve your life using Perth property. Our show is brought to you by Investors Edge Real Estate, the highly rated and award-winning property management, sales and buyers agency servicing the whole of Perth. Now, here's your host, Jared Mann.
G'day and welcome to another episode of Perth Property Insider. I'm your host, Jared Mann, and today I'm going into some of the interesting questions getting asked on our Perth Property Investment Facebook group. If you're not already part of the group, head on over, search Perth Property Investment and join in the combos. Keep in mind that these are just my opinions and I don't know the full story and background of each person asking their question, but hopefully this will point people in the right direction and give you food for thought when you next come into a situation similar to this. So first question, is there really a property shortage in Perth or is it just hype? I've had my parents' place up for sale for the last 4 weeks in South Guildford, and home opens are lucky to get one potential buyer through the door. So we are starting to see a little bit of patchiness. Obviously depends on the property type, the area, and that's why you do need to get everything right when you're looking to sell a property. Keep in mind that big picture, we're still 20% fewer listings online than we had at the same time last year. So it is a super tight market, but you can't take that for granted by putting up a photo of a letterbox or overpricing a property or not investing in marketing to get good exposure. All of these things are required to get a good demand around the property, ultimately to get competition and then to sell for a good price. So in my experience, South Guildford is not a very popularly searched suburb. If you have probably $700K to spend, $800K, I'm not sure on the exact asking price, but a lot of people don't think, I'm going to go and look in South Guildford. It's a relatively small suburb, the search volume's low, and you really would need a highlight listing on the main portal, which is most popular in Perth, being realestate.com.au. And that highlight would help you appear in surrounding suburb search results. So as people that are looking into Guildford, into Bayswater, into Midland, it would show up in those search results and help you get found a lot more. And then you need to go through and really look at, is your presentation top notch? Are your marketing photos really good? Is your advert description on point? Is everything showing the property at its best? And I would then be very much looking to what is the online exposure levels per week, because I typically find that 800 online views tends to translate to 12 buyers through, and from 12 buyers I tend to get 2 offers. Now sometimes we can have more quality than quantity, so we might get only 6 buyers, but we get 3 offers from that. So quantity is not everything. You do need to look through to quality, and is the property meeting expectations set with the photos and advert copy online, and people coming through and seeing value ultimately is what we're looking at. And you need your agent to follow up with people early the next week if there isn't offers being made, and also go deeper with buyers at home opens to find out why is the property potentially not suiting them, what sort of price do they think it's worth, would they be prepared to make an offer at that. You need to really go deeper quickly to find out what the market thinks and then adjust the price to meet the market. And when you find the market, then you'll often find multiple offers and potentially push the price back up to around where you were asking. If not, you'll at least be sure that you're getting the best price. What you don't want to do is put your head in the sand on only getting one buyer through the door, wait 4 to 6 weeks when the property's entirely gone stale, and then have no chance of selling for a good price. You'll have to invest more money in marketing then, because any highlight or features will have ran out. You will have to adjust the price anyway, which you should have faced and done earlier, within the first and second week if you weren't seeing the response that you needed, and if the feedback was telling you that you were overpriced. And ultimately, feel free. It sounds like your agent's not in control of this sale. So many agents have come into the industry over the last couple of years. They don't know how to go about selling when they're not, they're used to just chucking a property on the market and getting multiple offers before the weekend. And it hasn't really been that dependent on their skills. And many haven't sold in a down market and know how to create and manufacture competition and demand from nothing, how to really go serve the limited number of buyers that you have and work them together to end up with an offer and some magic out of nothing. So all of that is very fresh in my mind still. And if we do all those things, I'm sure that you will end up selling and getting the best price possible. Next question. Hi, I'm considering selling our home in Canning Vale. It's currently on Airbnb and we're now living overseas. We've had an appraisal for offers over 1.1 million. Would you sell now or hold off because the market is hot? Well, this question really comes back to what's your overall plan. So if you're not trying to build wealth over the longer term, and this all does feel like a very short term thing, you're renting the property out on Airbnb. That's a short term sort of thing anyway. It's not really a strategy that you'd use for the long term. There's a lot of extra hassle in that. I'm surprised that you're doing that when you're overseas. Maybe you've got someone local to handle it. There is very few people that handle that type of management well, so it can be particularly challenging and maybe influencing your decision to sell potentially. Canning Vale's in that sort of middle part of the market now. It has done very well over the last 3 years. It's had a 55% increase, but by no means, other suburbs have still, in the lower end performed higher than that. Its 10-year change in price is 56.25%. So that tells me it's had a 5.6% average annual increase over 10 years. Longer term, I would expect that's around about what Canning Vale has performed, maybe slightly higher. So there might be a little bit of juice left in the tank. Being in that sort of middle price, I think that there will be, because a lot of people are upgrading from the lower end and moving in to places like Canning Vale at the moment. When I look at our short-term prediction tools, there's an 8% growth predicted over the next year. So that's encouraging. And it is hard to choose the very top of the market. So it just depends how important as well selling and getting the very best possible is for you if the market did turn around suddenly. And I'm not saying that it will, but there's always that chance. What would that mean to your situation if you didn't get quite as much as possible? And let's take the scenario where it does go up by 8% over the next year. Let's say you don't time the market perfectly, it drops back 5%, or there isn't as much heat involved when you're selling it. So you're still pretty likely to end up better overall if you hold on for a bit longer. It all depends what your risk tolerance is and where that sits in your comfort zone and how important it is for the reason that you're selling. If you're looking to pay down debt, you'll probably do that anytime and you can probably hang on a little bit longer. With Airbnb, you've got a lot of flexibility there, so you're not locked into a 12-month lease. You can keep your eye on the horizon and really look to sell if you do start seeing some storm clouds. With a traditional lease, you'd need to, we suggest to our clients that you extend 6 months at a time, and that way you're not locking yourself in for a 12-month lease and you've got a bit more flexibility. So keep that in mind if you're in a similar boat and thinking about when to sell. But ultimately, I'd encourage you to go back to what is your larger plan to things. Are you a long-term investor trying to create wealth, or is it, if you're definitely selling, then get in with an agent. Speak to me. I can keep an eye on when's that ideal time. We can look at doing it more strategically, and that way reducing the risk that you're going to not time things correctly. Next question. Hi, asking for opinions. I can't make a decision myself. I've got a 3x2 front unit in Nollamara. I bought it for $380,000. Given the current market estimate of $650 to $700, mortgage has got $250K left. Rent has been paying down the principal and interest loan, which is great. Been leased for the last 4 years. But a pretty awesome return going from $380 to $650 to $700 in 4 years. That's great. Have a young family now and thinking of cashing it out, as we don't plan to live there in the future, and have 3 other properties wanting to sell it before the 6-year rule is up for capital gains tax exemption. So they mustn't have another home yet. They must have their other 3 properties that they're renting out, and they can still claim their home on this property for up to 6 years. And then if it passes that time period, it basically can't be claimed as a home. You don't get any exemption on your capital gains tax. So it goes on to say, I don't need the money now, but wondering whether it's worthwhile to cash out before the capital gains tax kicks in while the market is good. I guess my question is it really going to increase in value more than the capital gains tax I will be exempt from, as I'm in the highest tax bracket? So being in the highest tax bracket, that's 45 cents in the dollar tax that you'd potentially need to pay, depending on, if your partner owns the property with you as well, and if they're on a lower tax bracket. Let's take the worst case scenario of highest tax bracket across the board. So if you've held it for more than a year, you'd pay 22.5%, being half that rate. So pretty reasonable tax once you consider that reduction for holding it more than a year. And what under his, if he sells it and claims that it was, that 6-year exemption, potentially no capital gains tax versus the 22.5% that I just discussed. So yeah, it is potentially appealing, and I have had other clients ask themselves this question, which is why I thought I'd pose it. And it really comes back to your larger plan. I mean, you still have to pay selling costs when you sell. If you're going to replace the asset, you'd have to pay buying costs again to get back in. And Nollamara has really come into its own. I'd have to admit, it's close to the city. It's been very popular with starting out professionals that want that low maintenance lifestyle. Yes, it's had a really big surge, but I still think it's going to be popular into the future. I don't think it's going to suddenly be out of fashion. Yes, it has grown by a fairly large amount. I mean, we look at the 10-year change, it's averaged 4.5% over the 10 years. It's had a big surge in the last 5 years after going down a fair bit in the period before that. But I still think there's a bit more upside potentially too, because at 4.5% average annual growth over 10 years, I think it's going to probably still have a bit more in the tank, a bit more squeeze of the lemon, if you will. And when I look at the predicted capital gains tax, it's looking like, the predicted capital growth, it's looking like being 8% predicted over the next year. So that's encouraging as well, that there should be some more upside before things start to cool off. So you'd potentially miss out on that too. So that upsides are going to also sort of compensate you for the tax that you may have to pay down the track. But if you never sell, then you never have to pay tax at all. And, I'd really be looking to what's your overall strategic plan? Do you need this property as part of that longer term goals? And it's obviously shown that it can perform. So yes, through mean reversion, it might have a quieter period coming up after this growth cycle finishes. But that's the nature of investing in property. And I did an interesting episode a few episodes back on, trading the trends, which is what we're almost effectively asking here. You've had an above average return over 4 years. It's almost the exact scenario. Even if it was going to be flat for 4 years, my study showed that you're likely going to be better off keeping the property unless you could trade into something else and achieve a average of 14% every year. Then you're likely going to be better off keeping it. Not the exact situation, because we do get a CGT exemption and not have to pay tax in this first instance. But I think longer term, that would fade away and still be far better to keep the property if you're a long-term investor. So hopefully that helps and gives a few other angles, a bit more of the mindset to thinking around things, and good luck with your decision. Next question, what's the difference between a redraw account and an offset account and the benefits of either that you've found? Now, the biggest difference between a redraw and an offset is when you put the money in, you still don't pay interest on that amount that you've put into it, which is what they have in common. So if you have extra cash, you could put it into the main loan account, and that's why it's called a redraw, because you can redraw it back out again. The challenge and difference comes where when you put it back into the loan, it pays down the principal. And so when you take it back out of the loan, the ATO looks at what's your purpose that you've taken it out of the loan for. And if you're using it for personal reasons and not investing, then the interest would not be tax deductible on that portion. And it becomes very messy for your accountant to work that out at the end of the financial year. So you're going to be far better off if you set up an offset account, because then you've got flexibility about taking it back out for any purpose. It leaves the purpose of the original loan intact, being for the investment, because you're not actually paying down the loan and redrawing it back out. So offset accounts are the way to go and the best way to keep tax deductibility of your loans and have ultimate flexibility of where you use the money. Next one, legal question. We've done pre-settlement inspection on a property and our solar inspector found the system's not operational. We've flagged it as an issue to be rectified by the sellers, and they've said they will, but the system had never worked during their 12 months of ownership. However, the property was advertised with solar panels. So it sounds like the seller's challenging whether or not this is required to be fixed. We suspect the repair may be costly and may not even be possible. Our guy said it would need replacing. What is the legal obligation of the sellers here, and how do we ensure they meet that obligation? Thanks in advance. So if the agent has included mention of the solar panels on the advert, well, it's every buyer's assumption then that the panels are going to be working. So, but that can still have some grey area, and you'd really have to consult and get some legal advice on whether that constitutes that they would be working or not. What you need to then look through to is, do you have some other clauses that might protect you, such as a warranty on electrical, plumbing and gas items? Because the warranty on electrical items would usually then cover the solar panels as needing to be working. And that's going to be the way to get the clearest cut answer and make it completely necessary for the seller to have to fix them and provide them in a working order for settlement. Keep in mind that with any warranty clause, and speak to your settlement agent and get legal counsel on this, with any warranty clause, it does depend how it's written. Some allow for money to be retained in the event that the work isn't done or that the seller doesn't agree. That's good to have those extra parts to the clause. But there isn't actually, you don't actually have grounds, as far as I'm aware, to hold up settlement over a warranty clause. What would be required is for you to then take civil legal action against the seller separate to that settlement of the property. Most buyers don't realise that, and that's my understanding. I'm no lawyer, get your own advice, but that's what my understanding is, that for a warranty you can't hold up settlement and that it's more of a civil claim action. But once the sales agent understands that it falls within the warranty and that it's part of the contract and it's clear for him or her to go and follow up the seller and require it, then usually in 99% of cases warranty clauses are upheld and the things are done prior to settlement. So hopefully that all helps. Definitely, speak to your settlement agent, see what's in your contract, get a property lawyer involved if you need to, and that would be the best way to go. Next question. I recently rented out my house, and despite all the media showing there's a rental shortage, it was challenging to rent and we had to reduce the price to find a quality tenant. So what's going on? Now, I did cover mention of this in my Perth property market update released a week or two ago, that in some areas at the moment, especially those that are really popular with investors, there is in some cases an oversupply of certain types of properties. Imagine an area that's a hotspot for investors, all buying in, all putting their properties up for rent. You need to jump on realestate.com, look at what else is for rent. If there's 5 others, 10 others that are similar to yours instead of 2 or 3 others, then it could be potentially harder to rent. So you've got to factor that into your rental price. And it does get back to similar things that I was answering with potential difficulty of someone selling. You need to have professional photos. You might need to highlight your listing to appear in surrounding suburb search results. You need a good advert copy. You need to show the property regularly. You need to make it at times that tenants can attend and be available. You really want to be showing it at least 1 to 2 times per week. You want to be getting feedback from tenants to know if you're on track, making adjustments if you're not. And if you don't get enough inquiries within 4 days, then you'd look to make an adjustment straight away down in rental price, because that's a very clear sign that the market's not seeing value. And this isn't across the board. Check out the vacancy rate as well when you're coming to buy in an area. If you're at 2%, the market's starting to soften a bit and you're at a more even market. If you're at 3%, it is on the softening side, even more so. If it's under 1.5%, still very tight and you shouldn't have any problems renting the property, but do look through to similar properties because it depends what's in demand in the area as well. Family-friendly homes, you're always going to have no trouble renting in any market, usually. Other types of properties like apartments, you might need to obviously look through to how many's in the building, in the complex of yours itself, because that can make it very hard when there isn't much uniqueness or difference between what else is online. And you just, again, it comes back to property managers needing to have some skill and expertise around this instead of, just blindly putting up an advert and expecting that the property will be gone straight away. So certainly no cause to go waving the white flag on the Perth rental market. Still very tight. Overall market is looking very good. There's been a few extra properties come on in these certain areas, which is probably a good thing for tenants, giving them some more options. And I would take that into account when you're buying the property so that there's no surprises. Thanks for tuning in today. If you've enjoyed the episode, do like and share it with your friends. I appreciate any reviews or ratings that you might give on Spotify and iTunes. And I really hope that this has been of value to you. Catch you on the next one. Just a reminder, the information discussed in this podcast is general in nature. As we don't know your specific situation, you should always seek professional advice before taking any action. For free market reports on your suburbs of interest and other helpful resources to grow your wealth, make sure you join my property investor update at investorsedge.com.au/join. And finally, make sure you're a member of our Perth Property Investment Facebook group to be part of the conversation with other like-minded investors, get help to your questions, and get a feel for what's going on out there in the market. I'll see you in the group.